Howdy, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and I just want to do a real quick guide to help you learn how to avoid ganks. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Come by, check out the stream. Happens every night around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on YouTube. Usually goes till about 2 or 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. We'd love to have you, and I try to be as conversational as possible while I'm playing, explaining what's going on in the game, as well as just talking about whatever you want to talk about in the chat. So come by, very interactive. It's a good time. And if you like guides like this, check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. I'm constantly adding new patch notes and tier lists for every patch that comes out, and I also have lots of topical guides like best one trick, how to macro better, how to micro better, what is dodging, when should you dodge, does luck exist in League of Legends, and just dozens and dozens of other videos out there. I'm constantly adding more, so be sure to like, subscribe, and come by and check all that out. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So this is a major point of frustration, I think, for a lot of players in League of Legends, is getting ganked, and it can feel unfair, it can feel like you're being targeted, it can feel like there's just nothing you can do about it, when in fact there's quite a lot you can do about most ganks. And most of the time it involves sacrificing a very small loss to prevent a much larger loss, and then working around what you have and just keeping the game winnable and keeping your lane salvageable with the ganks. So let's go ahead and talk about how you can do this. So I have 6 different things I'm going to mention. So vision, pathing, understanding what weak side means and strong side, and how that should affect the way that you're playing the lane. Wave management, abductive reasoning, which we'll talk about that in a little bit, which is different than deductive reasoning. And then common tells. So what are some ways that you can tell when a gank's coming in? Okay, but let's start with vision. I talk about vision all the time in almost all of my videos because it is such an important resource. It's really the most powerful resource in the game. A lot of people look at gold, but if you look at how most games are won, a lot of it is a really good engage, or consistently having good engages and good information wins games, right? So even if you're behind in gold, if you're able to get that really good engage and just win a team fight and grab a Baron, all of a sudden you're back in the game, right? Even if all of your lanes lost by a little bit, if you get that really powerful engage later, then it can completely turn a game around. And that's why vision is so important, is it lets you sort of plan ahead and predict where they're going to be, and then have that all-important engage ready to go whenever the time comes. Let's talk about vision here just really quickly, and I don't want to spend the whole video talking about it because, once again, I do talk about it all the time. But I just want to hit on a couple of key aspects. Number one is you need to try to ward the camps if you're a support. So this is mostly going to be targeted towards supports, but I think a lot of these principles can apply to any role out there. It's just my audience is mostly going to be supports because I'm a support player. But you need to try to ward the camps. So, and this isn't always possible, but I think it's possible a lot more than people make it out to be. So what do I mean? I mean that instead of like putting a ward, if you have priority here, if you have them pushed in, instead of putting like a ward here or here, you know, after you get your warding item, try to see if you can go up and put a ward here. If you're on blue side, this will watch Gromp and blue. And sometimes it's dangerous. If you can sneak in through either this way or this way, then you can try to put a ward on their wolves. And that's a little bit less important, and it's a little more dangerous to place that one. You can do it, but this one is very doable, the one near the Gromp in the blue. And the reason that you want to ward the camps is people have to go farm their camps, right? It gives you the timers on the camps, and it'll let you know when they're there. It'll also let you know when they're likely to be going there. So whenever that Gromp spawns, it's highly likely that that's going to be one of the next destinations that the jungler ends up going. And that will tell the rest of your team where they are. So if you have this little shallow ward like right here, yeah, that's cool. You might see them in time, right, if you're getting ganked, right? But maybe they also just blast cone over, you know, and then they gank you anyways. You don't have enough time to react. So this is not really that great unless you're under high pressure. But the really big thing there is not only does it give you more time to avoid ganks over here, it tells the rest of your map where the jungler is. So then your top laner, if that's a very volatile top lane, if you have like Darius and a Garen or something like that, your Darius might be afraid to go in and fight because he doesn't know where the jungler is, because he doesn't have a lot of vision. But if you see the jungler down here, if he sees the jungler down here, then he knows, okay, I know I'm going to have a one-on-one here, let's go ahead and fight this. Or your jungler might even be on the top side, and they say, okay, we see their jungler on the bottom side, so we know this is clean to go. Go up here, gank it, get a kill. right? Could apply to the mid lane as well. Maybe you see the jungler right here, and then your jungler's right here, but they're not sure if the enemy's going to counter gank them or not. Now they know they're not, so they can go in, wrap around, and get this really aggressive gank. So just getting the wards on the camps helps your entire team out. It helps your entire team manage the situation better than just having those shallow wards. So if you're in a losing lane, if you're getting completely blasted, then yes, it might be a problem, right? So if your AD carry picks Ezreal and, you know, you're Janna or something like that, and you're pushed all the way in here, yes, you're not going to be able to get that ward because you're going to be going offsides. I call, like, offsides is when you're moving past the enemy line where they are, because it's much more likely that the enemy is going to be able to rotate over and kill you, right? So if your ADC's right here and you try to go get one of these deep wards and they just happen to have this river warded, well, now all of a sudden they can collapse on you when you're up here and pick you off and kill you. So you don't want to do that. So you might have to deal with just putting a little shallow ward here, and if you can, like, you know, maybe getting a ward here. You just got to do what you got to do. Or if you're red side and you're getting pushed in, then, you know, you just might have to put like a shallow ward over the wall here and a shallow ward here. So it just kind of depends on where you are, but warding the Gromp is a big deal. And then if you can get a ward on Raptors, that's really nice. Another good one, if you're able to dominate, you know, you're able to push in here and they have to back or something like that, a really great place to put some wards if you're on red side is just to clear out the tri-bush. After you get this cleared, you can go over, put a ward here, and then put a ward over this little wall on golems, and you'll see every single camp on their side of the map. And you might even think about, if you don't need to use your pink ward aggressively in the bush, if you're just pushing them in over and over again, you might even consider putting a pink ward in here somewhere. But yeah, just getting that vision so that it helps your whole team understand the pathing and where the jungler is going to be and what they're doing, so they can make good decisions. And then also, on a similar note, is respect darkness, right? So if you have no clue where the enemy jungler is on the map, you need to play as though they could be there, right? So if you haven't seen the jungler in a while and you push up, this is so common. I see this all the time in coaching sessions that I do, and even in some of my games. People will push up and they want to sit here and try to harass under tower, right? So just try to land some extra auto attacks, try to auto attack the tower. This is really bad if you don't know where the jungler is. There's a lot of bad things that can happen here, actually. Like the mid could potentially, you know, rotate down on you. You could get teleported on if they have a ward here. You know, their top lane, Irelia or whatever, could teleport in behind you if you don't have that swept. Their jungler could just come in and blast cone over right here. Even if you have it warded, you're too far out of position. So, you know, sometimes people will keep doing that and they'll try to harass and they'll be like, oh, well, the top laner, you know, teleported on me, or the jungler came down and is camping me. It's like, well, yeah, because you're a very easy target and you're not respecting the bad things that could happen to you here. So it's much better after you push them in, unless you absolutely unequivocally know that they're top lane, just to back off and do something else, right? Go get some of that deep vision that I mentioned before. Sweep out the wards. Even what I call ganking your own lane can be better, right? Where you fake like you're going to go roam mid, and then you can rotate back and sneak into one of these bushes, right? If you know this bush isn't warded, you can sneak back through here and then get into this bush. That's better than you're setting up for that all-in, you know, kill situation. But either way, you do not want to be caught up here just pushing and bullying them into tower and harassing them unless you absolutely know where the jungler is and you're very confident you're not going to get teleported on or roamed on by the mid laner. But in general, that's one of the worst default positions to be in, because you can push and put them in a tower and not be pushed up that far. It's still going to do a little bit of chip damage to the tower. They're still going to miss CS, most likely at the tower, and more importantly, you can use that vision advantage, right? You can clear their vision and go off the map. You could roam middle. You could get that vision. You could gank your own lane. You could get a preferable back timing, right? Maybe your ADC just grabs a couple of long swords or something, and then you come back up. And maybe once you get here, they try to push you in. They get the minions, you know, maybe to the middle before they back. Dragon's up right here. No problem. Just call in your jungler. Get that out of there. Just call in your jungler, push this as hard as you can, and then they're going to be pinned under tower trying to clean that stuff up, and now you can just do the dragon, right? So don't feel like you're not gaining an advantage if you push them in, if you're not constantly harassing them under tower and doing those high-risk types of plays. You can still get really big advantages and also play safer. So just make sure you're respecting that darkness. Make sure that you understand that, bad things could happen to you. Okay, pathing. So trying to understand pathing is super important as well, and predicting. Now, some of this is going to come down to knowledge of junglers and the kinds of clears that they have, but the most generic pathing that's going to happen in the jungle most of the time is going to be start bottom. The junglers are going to start bottom, and then they're going to be on the top side of the map ready to gank around 3 minutes. It might be 3:15 if they do scuttle first, depending on the jungler. Like, when I jungle Nunu, I like to get the scuttle first because then you get that extra movement speed to come in and get the gank whenever possible. And there might be some junglers that go a little faster. Like Lee Sin is probably just going to do like blue Gromp, red gank, right? So if it's a champ that does not AoE clear very quickly, they don't do wolves very well, and they don't do raptors very well early, then it's more likely they're going to gank you, maybe at 2:45 even, depending on how fast they clear. But just understanding that around 3 minutes, if you're on the top side of the map, it is dangerous. And you need to ping that if you're on the bot side too. Just ping like question mark, like back, because that happens so many times where, a top laner is just going to push in and they're not going to know the timings of the jungler, and then they're going to come in and they're going to get ganked, and that's going to be it. Right? Especially if that jungler is going to be able to beat your jungler in a one-on-one, right? So if they have Olaf or something like that early, and you've got like, I don't know, Skarner or, Trundle or something like that, there's just no way they're going to be able to beat that Olaf in a 1v1 or a 2v2 in the top lane. You have to be very careful with that. Now, there are some really notable exceptions. So Twitch is one that I mentioned. Wherever the red buff is, Twitch is going to gank one of those lanes that's accessible from the red buff at level 2 100% every game. He has to do that, because if he doesn't get a kill off of one of those, he falls really, really far behind because he can't really gank otherwise. So, for instance, if you're on blue side, or let's say, if you're on blue side, that Twitch is going to start up here, right? And if you're the top laner, you cannot push. You're still going to be level 1. Maybe you just dinged level 2 by the time this Twitch rolls up. So you have to be extremely careful until you see this Twitch. Does it suck? Are you going to miss CS at this wave? Probably. If you're melee, it's going to be really hard to get any CS if Twitch is on the map, right? But that's just the price you pay for Twitch. He's terrible if he doesn't get a kill. So as long as you don't give him a kill early and you miss, maybe 5 or 6 CS on the first few waves, if you're still getting the experience, it's okay. That's worth the loss just to be safe. All right? Or he could gank middle lane. So you got to be aware of that. There are champions like Kayn, right, who really, really wants to start on red side no matter what. So if you're playing bot side, you need to be aware of that, hey, Kayn's probably starting red side because he likes raptors, and then he's probably going to be down here at 3 minutes or so. And there's some other champs, maybe you have a weak, or the enemy has a weak early game jungler and they don't want to fight the enemy jungle, right? So if your jungler is Olaf and he's pathing top, if that jungler is smart, if it's like an Evelynn or a Fiddlesticks or something that doesn't want to fight Olaf, they're going to start top and then they're going to path bottom. So if they have a weaker early game jungler, just be aware they might be on the bottom side of the map. You can also ward this, and that's helpful, and that's why I like using my first ward. Unless you are like super scared of an invade, save your first ward and see if you can get that ward up there, around like maybe the 145 mark or so, and then it should last until about the 315 mark when they get scuttle. Or you can even put it up there at like 2 minutes or something. But this should be ideally where you're putting your first ward, is right where that scuttle, where the shrine goes after they kill it. Because if you do like a little shallow ward, I see sometimes people just ward the river here. The problem is if the enemy jungler comes up here and they path and they like get the scuttle to go top, and I do this all the time. If I'm a jungler, a lot of junglers will, they'll know this little area down here is the most likely to be warded, so they'll chase the scuttle up here, kill it right here, and then the scuttle spawns and this ward doesn't see it, right? And then that could be really bad if the jungler, walks around, gets behind you and ganks you here, or if they walk around and get the mid laner there. So make sure that you're putting that ward, right here, warding that really important camp early. So just be aware of that. Understand pathing, where people are going to be. Sometimes there's some creative pathing out there, but with your early ward, you can probably get some pretty good information if you're watching that scuttle, and just make sure that you're relaying that information to the enemy so that everyone can make good decisions. Okay, now this is some stuff that I haven't talked about a lot in other videos that I think is really important to try to master this, and it's a difficult concept to understand and to kind of read into it, but I think that it's very useful once you learn how to master it, is understanding what is a strong side and what is a weak side of the map. So the strong side of the map is where someone should be playing a lot of the times. So strong side means that you're going to have help from your jungler, and you're probably going to be able to win a lot of the fights. That means that your team is playing to that side of the map most of the time. That's where the vision's going to be. That's where your jungler is going to be a lot of times. That's where you're going to have winning matchups in your lane. That's where your team is going to be at its strongest. Weak side is usually where you do not want to play around, right? It could be a losing lane. It could be that the enemy has strong stuff down there. Their jungler's down there, and they can beat your jungler. So it's just the side of the map that you do not want to play on as a team if you're trying to give yourself the best chance to win. You always want to play around your strengths and try to minimize your weaknesses, not the other way around. So, number one, in the lobby, if you're not duoed with a jungler, you need to be checking Porofessor. I talked about this in my last video, top 5 tips for climbing. Be sure to check that out. I'll see if I can link it in the description, or maybe I put it at the beginning of the video or something. But check Porofessor. It tells you lots of information on different characteristics of different players. I don't think I have any Porofessor tabs still open right now, but I like that over op.gg because it'll tell you things like, this person's weak to ganks. They die to ganks a lot. This is an aggressive laner. This person is really good on their champion. This person is on a cold streak. They lose a lot of games. Sometimes they have something called bad mood, which means that after they lost a game, they're more likely to lose their next game by like 8%, which means they probably tilt. So just check that out. And the main thing you're looking for is a duo when you're thinking about weak side. So if the jungler and the top lane are duoed and you're playing bot side, you got to understand that they are probably going to camp top because they're duoed, right? Or if the jungler and the middle are duoed, they're probably going to camp for each other. Not always the case, but there's going to be some bias towards your friend that you're duoing with, right? So just keep that in mind early on. And, it is what it is, right? So don't play a lane where you need a lot of help if the jungler is probably not going to be there, right? So don't play something like Vayne into Jhin Leona and then cry at the jungler and say, oh my god, my jungler didn't help me. Why are they helping this Darius top? It's like, well, if you would have looked at that beforehand, you could see they're probably going to camp for their top side, right? And then it's up to you, right? If you're committed to winning, you need to adjust around that. You need to say, okay, I'm going to play a champ that's good at weak side, right? I'm going to play something where I can just farm and be useful, and maybe I have to give up a little CS every now and then, but I'm going to play something like Misfortune, right? Who's got good range, she can last hit pretty well, she's got decent wave clear, and she's got that really powerful ultimate, right? Where even if you're behind, you can still, completely shred the enemy team with that ultimate. Or just play something like Ashe, where it's like, okay, maybe I'm behind, but I can help out with scouting with my hawk shot early on to track the jungler, help keep myself safe and keep everyone else like in the know. I've got my arrow, I've got slows, like I can actually do some stuff even if I'm behind. So just keep that in mind. Also, expect that you're probably going to be on weak side if you are a weak early game laner or you don't have any CC, right? So if you're a jungler and your top lane is a Darius, into something like a Camille, a really volatile lane where there's, a lot of kill pressure there, and then your bot side is Soraka and Vayne playing against Jhin, Leona, or something like that, where are you going to gank? You're probably going to gank the top side, right? Because the Darius is going to be much, much more likely to convert a kill for you. Because Soraka and Vayne, you can do some stuff there, but their bot lane is extremely more powerful in the early game. They have more CC, a lot more damage, a lot more kill threat. A lane like that might even be able to 2v3 you in the early game. So if you're playing, and this is why I do not like having weak ADCs in the early game in most metas, right? Unless, you know, the enemy might also play a weak ADC. It's really bad news. So stuff like Kai'Sa, Vayne, Ezreal, don't expect to get ganks if you're playing those champs. Like, it's fine if you want to play them, and if you have a really strong, like, support with you, maybe you can do it. So if you're playing, like, Kai'Sa and you have a Leona, then all of a sudden, yeah, maybe you can make the kill because the Leona is going to be able to lock him down and do a lot of damage, so your jungler can actually convert those kills early. But if you're playing Soraka or you're playing, you know, just something else, Yuumi, it's not that those champs can't be bad, it's just that, like, they don't have a lot of early game CC, and they don't have a lot of early game damage to help the jungler convert those kills. So, expect that you're going to be playing on the weak side in those types of matchups. Which is fine, you know. If you can just play, like, Kai'Sa, Yuumi, and just keep the lane frozen outside of your tower and just don't die a lot, and that allows your jungler to, you know, go topside and camp for that Darius and get that Darius 3 kills, then maybe you fall behind 15 CS in the bot lane from getting bullied, but maybe that's okay because you scale really well, and, you know, Yuumi gets a lot of really powerful items like Moonstone, Staff of Flowing Water, all that stuff. So it's okay if you're on weak side and you're losing your lane there, as long as, like, your jungler is doing something on the map and is able to win some lane and you can scale through it. So those lanes are possible, but it's a huge reason why you don't see a lot of that stuff in high-end play, right, is because it will be abused in a lot of metas. But anyways, so that's just something to keep in mind. And if you blow flash, you are going to be vulnerable for 5 minutes, right? They understand your flash is blown. It is likely they will come camp you. Okay, so don't be surprised, right? If the enemy jungler comes back in 1 minute and, you know, ganks you and kills you if you blew your flash. So, you know, the higher the elo goes, the more they're going to punish you for those summoners, but just, you have to adjust your play. You have to be more careful, right? If you blow your flash as Draven, you know, early on in the bot lane, and then you push up to their tower like this, you can't be surprised, right, that their red Kayn is going to come back down through this wall and gank you, and you're going to die, right? So you have to adjust your gameplay. Maybe you can push up and harass them a little bit more because you have your flash, and you're like, you know what, I think the jungler's pathing top, or whatever, but you weren't thinking, you forgot, okay, Kayn is going to start on Raptors and he's probably going to end up bottom, and then they catch you off guard and you have to blow your flash. Okay, but you have to adjust after that and make sure that you don't die again while your flash is down. If you die, if you fall behind, you will be repeat ganked most of the time. Your flash is likely going to be down. Now the enemy has more gold on you, so they do more damage, and it's more likely they're going to convert the kills. Right, and just in general, it's a really good idea to keep repeat ganking and killing the same people over and over again, because it just crushes their mental too, right? So not only is it more likely you get the kill, but now you're going to tilt someone out, where they might just AFK, they might start arguing with the jungler in the, you know, the chat. Y'all know how it goes, right? That bot lane Draven that dies 3 times because he keeps pushing, and doesn't have flash and is not respecting it. He's just going to say, God, do we even have a jungler on this team? This is so terrible. Like, you bunch of idiots. I'm just going to AFK push, blah, blah, blah. Right? If someone dies like 3 times, a lot of times, to ganks, you know, their mental might be crushed, or someone else's mental might be crushed on the team, right? Maybe this top lane Darius is like 1-0. He's like, hey, bottom, chill. Then bottom's like, no, you chill, and goes AFK or something, right? Like, it just destroys team morale a lot of times, especially in lower elos. If you give up a lot of kills consecutively on the same person over and over again. And I mean, we all feel that, no matter how mentally tough, you know, we might try to be. Whenever you tab and you see somebody who's 0-8, it's not a good feeling, you know, right? In a lot of games. So you may not say anything, you may not type anything, but it does kind of make you roll your eyes a little bit and just kind of, you know, that sort of thing. So be prepared to get repeat ganked. Most people understand that it's a really good situation for the team that's getting those ganks. And then finally, if your jungler is on the opposite side of the map, you are on the weak side of the map, right? So you need to respect that, right? So, and we'll talk about this here in a second in wave management and abductive reasoning, but if your jungler's up here ganking top, even though dragon's up, like, you just got to lay down that dragon. We'll talk about giving up objectives here in a second, but your jungler's ganking top, maybe your top laner's 0-2, and, you know, this is a Camille, and there's just no way they're going to convert a kill. Like, it's a terrible idea to gank that. Their jungler's bottom, or you don't know where their jungler is, but you don't see their jungler showing up top. Like, there's a good chance they're on the bottom side of the map, so you're going to have to back up, especially if Dragon's up. Right? So if you see that going down top, you should not be surprised. Right? You need to back up and respect it and just stay in experience range if you can, because highly likely the enemy jungler is going to be on the bottom side of the map, and they're probably going to try to kill you. And you're not going to have that backup. Versus if your jungler's on this side of the map and Dragon's up, right? If they're like over here even doing golems or something, you can maybe get away with being a bit more aggressive, because if this jungler comes down on a ward, because, you know, you have this warded, if their jungler's coming down and then they try to start a fight with you right here, then you can just ping in your jungler, and hopefully, now they're not always going to do this, but it's more likely that they will, you know, leave this camp and come over and show up and clean up this fight, potentially. Right? Versus if they're all the way over here on top side, maybe they're clearing, you know, Gromp or whatever, and you see this jungler over here, you know, you got to just back up because you're going to be outnumbered. So just keep that in mind. If your jungler is not on your side of the map, you need to be a lot more cautious. Okay. And be prepared to accept a small loss if you're on the weak side. Okay. So if you're behind, if your jungler's on the wrong side of the map or whatever, you just got to give it up. Right? And I see this, it's so hard for people to give stuff up. Like, once again, your jungler ganks top, is that the correct play when Dragon's up? 90% of the time, no, it's not. Right? Unless this is like a hard carry champion and you are really trusting this person to carry, it is not worth giving up a dragon for a kill up here, right? If you even get the kill, right? Because a lot of times if you try to gank top and you're the jungler, there's probably going to be something warded if your jungler hasn't swept it out. Right? So if you even show up on a ward on the top side of the map here, and their jungler has half a brain, they're going to immediately beeline over here to get this dragon. So unless you're super far ahead, you're just going to have to give up that dragon. Right? So if you see this happening, and this is really common, you know, the AD carry, the support will come over here, then you know, you're coming over here, you're thinking about it, maybe you even ward over here, and you see them taking the dragon, but, you know, it looks something like this. You just got to give that up because your jungler's topside. They made the choice. You got to live with it, right? Maybe somebody is, and this one's really painful, but maybe, you know, later on in the game, your AD carry is bottom, right? Without teleport. Everyone else is around top. Everybody's turbo pinging, you know, like, hey, Baron's up, but they can't get there fast enough because they just randomly wanted to go bottom. They're just sitting there listening to their music, you know, not paying attention to macro, and then the enemy, you know, sweeps out all the vision, gets control of this area, and now you've got, you know, a situation like this, and, you know, they're on the dragon here. You know, once again, unless you're mega far ahead, you're just going to have to give up that Baron. Because the ADC is on the bottom side of the map, or if your jungler's on the bottom side of the map, or just anybody that doesn't have teleport, unless you can win that 4v5, which is going to be difficult, and they're going to have position on you too. You're going to be walking through their wards. Yeah, they are going to be debuffed by Baron a little bit, but unless you just have a premier, like, prime time engage on top of them, it's going to be very, very difficult to win that. So you might just have to give up Baron. So that sucks. You don't want to give up Baron, but you know what's worse than giving up Baron? Giving up an ace plus a Baron, or 4 deaths plus a Baron, right? So sometimes you just have to learn how to accept that loss. And if you're just getting blasted in lane and your jungler's just not coming, even though maybe they should, right? So, like, if their jungler's topside and, you know, your jungler's down here and you're just sitting here and they are just constantly pushing you into tower over and over and over again, you know, and you've got this pink ward in your inventory as support, and you're like, hey man, come gank bottom, like, I know we can kill him, right? Like, maybe you're Leona and your ADC is, you know, Kai'Sa, or maybe it's like even, yeah, we'll just say Kai'Sa, like you have Leona Kai'Sa, and you've got a jungler who can fight early like an Olaf, but they just don't want to come gank you, and you're just getting busted up over and over again by this Seraphine misfortune, and they're committing these sins that I'm talking about here, where they're just constantly harassing you under tower and all this, but your jungler just never shows up. You know, you're on the weak side because you're poked out by the Kai'Sa, even though jungler's on that side of the map. they're just not playing around you for whatever reason. So you're just going to have to give up some CS, right? You might have to give up towers. You might have to give up dragons. This is another scenario as well that can be very difficult. Sometimes when there's a dive coming in, people think there's nothing you can do. Well, I couldn't do anything. They just dove me at the tower. It's like, well, yeah, you can. If you have good vision, you can see something like that coming, right? So maybe there's a ward up here. Maybe you see there's like a minion wave that's going to crash right here. Maybe your jungler's on the top side of the map. Maybe your mid laner just died. Sorry, I'll fix the camera there. I don't know why it does that sometimes. Anyways, maybe you see them coming in, right? Maybe you see the enemy junglers just rolling up here. They're clearing this ward. And you are playing, you know, Soraka, Ezreal in the bot lane, and they've got like, you know, Leona or Nautilus or Alistar or something here. This wave's about to crash in here in 10 seconds. Leave the tower. You leave. Okay, you just walk out and you give them that tower. Because there's no way you're defending that tower 3v2 on a crash if you're behind like that. So yeah, you are going to die if you stay. But you could have seen that coming with better vision, and you can just leave. You don't have to stay. You can leave. You know, maybe maybe your top laner is... maybe they're doing okay here, and your jungler is up here getting rift, and they're about to trade tower, you know, top tower on the rift. Or maybe they're about to dive the top laner, right? So maybe they're going to get this top laner and start pressuring that tower, right? But whatever it is, even if they're doing something that's completely ridiculous, that's like terrible, like maybe your jungler's over here like stealing raptors or something while they're diving you bottom, you know, there's nothing you can do about that. Like, you can't make the jungler play better, right? All you have to do, or all you can do, is just get out of the way and just give them the tower. So that's what I'm talking about. So many people will not give up a tower if they're about to be dove, or if it's low health, or if there's a really high probability they're going to die. You just got to learn how to give that up. So sometimes you got to give up CS. If you're on weak side, you might go down 10 or 20 CS. You might have to give up a tower. You might have to give up a dragon, maybe even a baron sometimes. But you got to always try to figure out, how can I minimize my losses? If we're in a bad situation, if I'm on weak side, we're a losing lane, jungler's just not paying attention to us, you know, you just got to minimize the losses. There's always a way you can avoid dying. And if you're on weak side, that's the name of the game, is do not die. Get as much experience as you can. Get the best vision coverage. Get the best CS that you can do, but just be prepared. You're going to take some losses. This happens. I mean, some pro players, I remember Dyrus like made a career out of this. That was his whole thing, was being the master of weak side. He would just play something on the top side of the map that was this like really old school TSM. Something on the top side of the map that was pretty good at surviving ganks, because the meta used to be just gank top every single time, over and over again, you know, most of the time. And he would just play something like a Vladimir, or just something else that was super safe top, and the TSM jungler would just like gank middle over and over again, and maybe sometimes gank bottom, but they would just always try to get Reggie or Bjergsen fed. And that was it. You know, Dyrus's job was to survive pressure, go down in CS, and just don't die. But anyway, so that's what you want to do. Now, as far as wave management, I already mentioned some of this. If you're strong, if you're on the strong side, if you're winning the 2v2, if your jungler's on your side of the map or whatever, then just push them in and try to get some priority, and then go do something else. I mentioned before, get that deep vision, get a dragon, back timing, roam middle, gank your own lane, whatever. If you're on the weak side, try to freeze. Don't let it crash if you can. If you let it crash, you're risking getting dove. And this is why I like ADCs with wave clear as well, like Misfortune. A lot of the times, things like Vayne don't have wave clear early, and they can crash you whenever they want. But if you can keep the minions even about right here, it's going to make it much, much more difficult to kill you, right? Because you do have the tower to protect you. So you do not want it to go into your tower if you can help it, because you're going to miss CS, it's going to do damage to the tower, and you're risking a dive. So try to freeze it here. Hopefully your support, you know, can help you auto-attack a little bit. But if they're coming in for a dive and you're playing something like Misfortune, I mean, even in like an absolute worst case scenario, you could just ult the wave, and just buy yourself another 30 seconds, right? Because they'll have to wait for another wave to crash. So you could just like ult the wave and then just like run away after that. Or You know, with Kaisa, you can be using your missiles as they're coming in, as they're trying to set up for this crash. You can be using your missiles to try to wave clear. You know, a lot of like Jin can be grenading to try to wave clear. So try to keep it frozen outside if you have to be in a very defensive position. So if you're just losing lane, if your jungler's on the other side of the map, whatever's going on, that's where you want to be if you have to be defensive. But remember, this should only be if you're in a losing situation. Most of the time. If you're winning, you can also try to freeze them out, but you do have to be careful that they don't sneak a dragon out from under you, or that the support doesn't go roaming, right? Because if you try to freeze out, you know, the enemy Kaisa or whatever, you stall them here, like, yeah, maybe you're denying that Kaisa 5 to 10 CS, but if Alistar, you know, comes in here and, you know, ganks your mid laner, boom, they get a kill, and then they push in and get a tower plate, that's worth a lot. That's like 30 or 40 CS. So you just got to make sure that it's worth it. There's always a give and take, so you got to read the situation. I have an entire video on wave management, so I won't go too far into that, but just do the best you can, apply as much pressure as you can, don't die, and just keep your resources high. Abductive reasoning. Okay, so this is a little bit more advanced, but, and all that means is you're trying to make decisions based on incomplete information, right? So sometimes you're not going to know, especially later in the game, if you don't have that great vision, or they just keep sweeping it out, you may not know 100% where the jungler is going to be, but there are some things you can think about and then kind of reason in your head, okay, they're likely to be in this area. Okay, so if your jungler ganks top and no one shows up from the enemy team, it is very likely the enemy jungler is on the bottom side of the map. And that's not always the case. They may have just backed, but let's say that you're on blue side, you know, your jungler comes around, ganks them, there's this fight going down, and then this enemy jungler dies. Okay, if you're on bot side of the map, the thing you should be thinking immediately is, why didn't their jungler show up to that, right? Now, it could be that their jungler is just bad, or that they're really far behind. You know, maybe they were at golems and just decided not to go, or maybe they were at raptors and decided not to go. But it increases the probability that the jungler's on the bottom side of the map, right? So that means that if you're here, like in the middle of this lane, even if you don't have vision in the river, maybe your ward's just expired or something, you should be backing up a little bit and playing a little bit more cautiously, because you know that there's an increased probability that the enemy jungler is on the bottom side of the map, because they didn't show up top. They have to be somewhere on the map, so they're likely going to be on the bottom. Or if you have like decent vision top and they don't have camps left, so like if red is gone and, you know, raptors is gone, right? If your mid laner puts a ward on raptors there's no raptors, and there's no red buff, where are they going to be? They're probably on the bottom side of the map, right? Because that's where the camps are going to be, and they're going to be on the side of the map where the camps are. If an objective is imminent, so if an objective is coming up, the jungler is going to be around that, probably. So if dragon is spawning in 30 seconds, let's say you're blue side of the map, you have no clue where the enemy jungler is, and the lane's like right here, dragon spawning in 30, you need to be very careful, right? Because think about the enemy jungler. What do they want to do most of the time, right? They want to get a kill and then get the dragon. And so the most common place to try to get those kills is bot lane, because bot lane gives you an opportunity to get multiple kills, and usually bot lane champions are pretty weak in the early game. A lot of ADCs aren't that strong, and a good chunk of the supports are very squishy and not that strong in the early game, like the enchanters. So it's just a huge target in the early game, and you're going to have 3v2, so 3 people can blow all their sums and kill a person. So it's very likely that they're probably going to try to gank bottom and get that dragon. So, you know, your gank radar needs to be going off as soon as like an objective's coming up. Within like 30 to 45 seconds, it's likely going to happen. Ideally, you have vision, you've backed, you're stocked and locked and ready to go to contest that objective. But if you're not, you need to understand that they're probably coming for you. If the buff bottom is spawning, so remember that buff is every 5 minutes or so. So, you know, around like 6:30 or 7 minutes, just expect that buff is going to respawn. They're going to be on that side of the map. they're probably going to gank you. So just watch those buff timers, and most people are going to go for those buffs. Now you can use these things to your advantage, right? You can call in your jungle for a counter gank if and you can bait them if the dragon's about to spawn, or if buff's about to happen, you could go invade their jungle and fight them at the buff. So you could like push them in whenever buff's about to spawn, like blue's about to come up. They started on blue, push this in, roll up here, bring your crew, like tell your jungler to come in, right? And then you just go invade here, get your ward set up, like maybe ward here, ward right there to see if bot lane's coming, and then maybe ward like right here, and then they roll up, start to get their blue, you have it warded, everybody's just like chilling right here, and then you just collapse and kill them. Their bot lane comes, tries to help, you turn around and kill them too. So just think about where's their next move most likely to be, right? And another thing, if they just ganked top, and that means they probably just cleared top, so they're going to be bottom next, right? So if their jungler is up here, they gank top, get the kill, disappear, 30 seconds later, if you are pushed in, where are they going to go? It's most likely their camps have spawned bottom because they were just top, so they're going to come back bottom, right, to get those camps. And while they're down here, if you're pushed up, they're probably going to gank you. So just keep in mind that every 30 seconds to a minute, the jungler is going to switch the side of the map that they're on depending on where the camps are. So you may not have perfect knowledge of exactly the spawn timers on the camps and what's going to happen. I think it's 2:30. Might be 2 minutes. I can't remember offhand exactly, but you just need to know that if they just did something on one side of the map, they're going to be on the other side of the map in like 30 or 45 seconds. And then if your jungler either gets vision top or invades top, I just mentioned this before, like if you see those raptors are gone, they're probably on the bottom side of the map, right? And they might even be in your jungle, so you got to watch out for them coming behind you if they're vertical jungling, which means that they're invading and taking your jungle, and your jungler is invading and taking their jungle. Okay. And I just want to finish off here with a couple of very common tells. So aside from the abductive reasoning, just observing what your opponents are doing in lane can give away if there's a gank that's, about to happen. Right? So the super obvious one, and never, ever do this, because it gives it away so easily, is to do some kind of like spam recall or dance or just really obvious recall or something like that. It really gives away that there is somebody that's going to be there, right? So it's like super amateur. You don't see that at higher ranks because it just basically announces, hey, the jungler's here. Most of the time, right? So there's the ADC. So yeah, you might see like something like this right here, and then maybe the support just stands like right here and starts taunting, or they just acting like they're backing or whatever. It's going to be an extremely high probability that their jungler is going to be, in the area ready to gank, right? So if you ever see that, do not fall for it. Do not engage. Like, yeah, maybe they're doing that to troll you, to fake you out while their jungler ganks top or whatever, but 9 times out of 10, they're trying to provoke you to engage on them. Another thing is if they clear a ward, like especially just kind of out of nowhere randomly, like if they're clearing one of your wards, then it's very likely there's going to be a jungler coming. So for example, if their support is, let's say that you are red side here in this scenario, and their support has been holding onto this control ward in their inventory for a while because they know if they put the control ward up, they don't have control of any of this area, so it's very likely that you're going to be able to clear it out if you're the red support, right? But then all of a sudden, they've had this control ward in their inventory, and you know that because you're tabbing. They've had this control ward in their inventory for 2 minutes, and then just out of nowhere, they just decide, you know what, I'm going to control ward this and clear this ward up, right? That means there's probably a gank coming in, or they just use their sweeper, out of nowhere to come over here and sweep this ward, and y'all are pushed up. It's like, that's a gank. Like 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a gank if they're just like spontaneously clearing your ward and using these resources that they haven't used in a while. It's going to be pretty rough. Change in behavior in the lane. So if they just all of a sudden start running at you, most of the time that's a gank, right? So if the Janna just like walks up this whole time, she's been like just hanging out in the back with Misfortune, and all of a sudden she just walks up out of nowhere and casts a W on you. She's been very passive. You should immediately think, okay, gank. Like, gank, gank, gank. As soon as they start going aggro and just acting really weird if they've been passive the whole time, it's because a gank's coming in, right? Even if they start positioning a little more aggro, they start moving up a little bit, you should immediately think gank and back up. Like, most people are not going to fake you out on this. They can, but if they do fake you out, like, every now and then, it's worth it, right? Like, just allow yourself to get faked, and just do not fall for those ganks. If you don't have the vision, you got to respect it. Or if all of a sudden they are really passive, right? So if you are, Vayne, Soraka, or something on red side, and they've been pressuring you the entire time, they are like Misfortune, Seraphine. They're pressuring you the entire time, and then all of a sudden they start sitting back on this wave. Like, they're not looking to harass or auto attack you anymore, and they had just been like turbo pushing this in, and now they're letting it push forward. You got to ask yourself, why this change in behavior? Why are they allowing you to push into them? Why are they not harassing you anymore, and they're hanging out like suspiciously back on the wave? It's because something's about to go down, right? Either like the mid laner is going to come down or the jungler is going to come down. Just watch for that. If they change their behavior and they start acting weird, then something's about to happen. Okay. Anything that seems like really suspicious for the character, and you have to start to kind of learn these things, but like if Thresh is standing next to a wall, for example, like you're pushed up here, you don't have vision, and then all of a sudden you see Thresh just like hugging this wall, like that's a gank. If Thresh like has been hanging out in a bush or whatever the whole time, then all of a sudden he's like up on this wall, that's because he wants to throw a lantern over the wall, right, and pull in the jungler. Or if Bard just mysteriously disappears, right, if they're pushed in here and Bard is just like rolled out of vision, you need to be thinking he's probably going to come through this wall with the jungler, right? So he might just be going to get chimes, who knows. But if Bard is off the map, especially if he's been there for a while, like you got to ask yourself, why is he going to get the chimes right now when he could be like he's losing experience to this tower? Right? Like, why doesn't he just wait until he backs to go grab those chimes, right? So if he's going at that moment, there's a high probability that he's looking to gank you off of something like that. Same, you don't see Tom Kinch anymore. That's a classic Tom Kinch thing, too, where he just walks off the screen and then ults in with somebody else. So just watch out for those kind of, weird moments where they could disappear. And you might even see, like, more advanced, like a Leona or a Nautilus, they might clear a ward and then go gank their own lane. Right, so they might try to like walk around and get a flank behind you. So just be aware of those things. And then another thing is if they're going for a bold ward clear, this is one of the best ways to bait supports into a fight. If they're going up to clear a ward and they have not tried to contest that ward in a long time, that needs to be sending off some alarms, right? So for example, let's say that the support is pushed up here, you've had a control ward in this bush the whole time, they have not tried to go for it. And then all of a sudden, they just decide, oh, I'm going to go up and step into this bush and clear this control ward up. Right? And then you're like, no, I'm going to protect it because I'm a support and I never want to let a control ward die. You walk up here and you try to, harass them or whatever. And then the support engages on you and the jungler comes running out and the, ADC collapses. It's classic. Just act like you're clearing a ward that you should not be allowed to clear, and then engage on them. So don't let those wards bait you. Be very, very careful. If they're acting weird, once again, that kind of falls under the category of acting weird. If they're clearing a ward that is too dangerous, and they know it's too dangerous to clear that, then it's probably because they have help. Now, yes, they may have just spontaneously lost their mind and just wanted to go and clear that ward because they're tilted or something. But I would definitely err on, the side of caution and say, look, it's probably because the jungler's there. Or something sneaky's about to happen. We're going to get teleported on, Galio's going to ult in, or TF's going to ult in, something like that's about to happen. So just be careful, watch their behavior. If it starts to change a little bit, if they're clearing wards that they have left up for a while, if they are trying to clear your wards that are really dangerous, if they're too aggressive or too passive, if the story just doesn't make sense, you got to be careful. But anyways, okay. Well, that's going to be it. Hopefully this helps you out. So a lot of ganks are very, very preventable, but it just starts with good vision and just a good understanding of the situation on the map. Are you on the weak side? Are you on the strong side? Where's the enemy jungler? And what's the best way to react? So you can sit there, and people they'll sit there and they'll complain, oh, there's nothing I could have done, the jungler dove me, or I got ganked 5 times, I just kept dying, there's nothing I could do about that. It's like, yeah, there is. There's always something you can do. There's always a way you can not die, right? Even if it is, like I said before, they're about to dive you bottom, you just walk away from the tower and give them the tower. That is better than you giving them 2 kills in the tower if you can't stop it, right? So you got to learn how to lay down some stuff. You got to give up the dragons. You got to give up the towers. You got to give up some CS. You got to respect the map a little bit. And yes, you are going to take some losses. No one's going to have a perfect game. Yes, that is frustrating, right? When the enemy is up 30 CS on you because, you can't go up to that wave because you're really far behind or the jungler keeps camping you. But sometimes you just have to do the best that you can, and that's really the best way to avoid ganks and stay out of those worst case scenarios. Because if you fall behind a little bit, right, if you're like 20 CS down as Vayne early in the bot lane and you don't give up any kills, though, that's carryable, right? If your top lane's doing well, they can help you out. Maybe they show up to a team fight. Maybe they teleport down later after they've taken their tower or something, get a couple kills for you, and then you're right back in the game. But if you go down like 0-5, right, then that's really hard to get back into the game, right? Your teammates, even if they're doing well, they may not do well enough to make up for that. So, just keep that in mind, right? It's okay if you lose lane sometimes. You should try to draft to win lane and to be strong as much as you can, I think, in a lot of situations at least. But, if that doesn't happen, just accept reality, do the best you can, and put yourself in a position for your teammates to help you out and get you back into the game later. Okay, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Check out the rest of the content on the channel. Come by, check out the stream also. Starts around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every night, only on YouTube. And I'll see you next time. Have a good day.